The worst day to meet the right man is usually the day someone else convinces you that you were never enough. My name is Emily Carter, and at 26 years old, I learned that lesson under the warm glow of restaurant chandeliers, while the entire world seemed determined to watch me fall apart. The rain tapped softly against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Bellamy's Steakhouse, turning the city lights outside into blurred streaks of gold and silver. It should have been a beautiful night. It was supposed to be our anniversary. I sat across from Ryan Foster, twisting the small silver bracelet on my wrist, while my untouched glass of sparkling water slowly lost its fizz. Something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way he kept checking his phone. Maybe it was the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes. Or maybe my heart already knew what my mind hadn't accepted yet. Emily, he said finally, exhaling like a man carrying an inconvenience instead of a relationship. I think we both know this isn't working. The words landed quietly. Too quietly. Like a snowflake that somehow starts an avalanche. I stared at him. What are you talking about? He glanced toward the entrance. Not at me. Toward the entrance. That's when I noticed the woman walking across the dining room. Tall. Elegant. Expensive. The kind of confidence money gives people when they've never had to wonder whether rent would clear. She stopped beside our table. Ryan stood immediately. My stomach dropped. This is Vanessa, he said. We've been seeing each other. For a second I honestly thought I had misheard him. The restaurant noise faded. The clink of glasses disappeared. Even the rain seemed to stop. You're joking. He didn't smile. Vanessa offered an uncomfortable little nod that somehow made everything worse. Emily, I didn't plan for it to happen this way, Ryan said. But Vanessa and I have opportunities together. A future. Things are moving fast. Opportunities. Future. Moving fast. Amazing how people can package betrayal inside corporate language. I felt heat rising behind my eyes. So you invited me here to watch you replace me? Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. Don't make this dramatic. I actually laughed. A small broken laugh. Dramatic. The word echoed between us. You brought another woman to our anniversary dinner. Several nearby diners had stopped pretending not to listen. My face burned. Ryan shifted uncomfortably before delivering the sentence that hurt most. You were never really the person I saw myself ending up with. There it was. The truth. Not hidden behind excuses anymore. Not dressed up in polite language. Just clean and sharp. I looked down at my hands because I suddenly couldn't trust my expression. Every sacrifice. Every late-night phone call. Every plan we had built together. Gone in a single sentence. I wanted to leave. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I sat frozen while humiliation wrapped around me like a heavy winter coat. Then I heard the sound of a glass being placed carefully on a table nearby. Not loud. Not dramatic. Deliberate. I glanced sideways. At the table beside ours sat a man I hadn't noticed before. Dark charcoal suit. Broad shoulders. Calm posture. Maybe 34 or 35. The kind of face that belonged on the cover of a business magazine. He had been sitting alone near the window the entire time. Watching. Not staring. Observing. His expression remained unreadable, but his eyes never left Ryan. Something shifted in the atmosphere around us. I couldn't explain it. The stranger stood. Slowly. Confidently. Every conversation within 20 feet seemed to fade. Ryan noticed him too. The stranger adjusted the cuff of his tailored jacket and took a single step toward our table. Then he looked directly at me before turning his attention to Ryan. What happened next would change the course of my entire life. Ryan straightened in his chair, forcing a smile that looked more nervous than confident. The stranger stopped beside our table and slipped one hand into his pocket. Up close, he carried the kind of presence that made people pay attention without ever raising his voice. His dark hair was neatly styled. His expression remained calm. But there was something in his eyes that made the entire room feel smaller. Is there a problem here? He asked. The question sounded simple. Ordinary. Yet Ryan immediately shifted. His weight. No, Ryan replied. This is a private conversation. The stranger nodded once as if considering that answer. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. Not the way Ryan had looked at me for months, distracted and impatient. Not the way people glanced at someone having a bad night. This man looked at me as if I actually existed. "Does it seem private to you?" he asked quietly. My mouth opened before I could stop myself. "Not anymore." A few people nearby chuckled. Ryan's face tightened. Vanessa stared at the tablecloth. The stranger turned back toward Ryan. "Interesting." He picked up an unused menu from the edge of the table and set it down again. A small movement. Somehow it drew every eye in the room. "You invited a woman here under the impression that she was celebrating an anniversary," he said. Then introduced her replacement before dessert arrived. Ryan's jaw clenched. "Look, man, this is none of your business." "You are right." The stranger gave a small nod. "It is not." He glanced toward me again. "But respect should be everyone's business." Silence followed, the kind that stretches longer than it should. Ryan laughed awkwardly. "You do not know the whole story." "Perhaps." The stranger's voice remained calm. "But I know enough." I should have felt embarrassed. Instead, something unexpected happened. For the first time that evening, I felt less alone. The stranger extended his hand toward me. "Nathan Whitmore." The name hit several nearby diners immediately. I saw recognition flash across more than one face. A man near the bar nearly spilled his drink. Even Ryan seemed to freeze for a second. Nathan Whitmore. I knew that name too. Everybody in New York knew that name. Technology, real estate, investments, magazine covers, billion-dollar acquisitions. The youngest CEO ever featured on the cover of Business America 3 years in a row. I stared at him. Emily Carter. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Nice to meet you, Emily." Ryan suddenly sat up straighter. "Wait. Nathan Whitmore." Nathan looked at him. "Yes." The confidence vanished from Ryan's face almost instantly. I watched the realization spread through him. The man he had been dismissing was worth more than everyone in the restaurant combined. Nathan did not seem impressed by Ryan's reaction. If anything, he looked bored by it. "Emily," Nathan said, his attention returning to me. "Would you like some advice?" I blinked. "I guess so. Never allow someone to decide your value after benefiting from it." The words landed directly in my chest. I felt my throat tighten. Ryan looked away first. Not me. Not Nathan. Ryan. Outside, rain continued sliding down the glass windows in silver ribbons. Inside, something was changing. I could feel it. Like standing at the edge of a cliff before realizing the ground behind you has already disappeared. Nathan reached into his jacket and removed a simple business card. He placed it carefully beside my untouched glass. "You are going to need this tomorrow." I stared at the card. "Why?" For the first time all evening, Nathan smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who already knew something the rest of us had not discovered yet. "Because your life is about to become much more complicated." I barely slept that night. Nathan Whitmore's business card sat on my kitchen counter beside a cold cup of coffee, looking completely out of place in my tiny Brooklyn apartment. Every few hours I caught myself staring at it. Not because I planned to call him, because I could not stop thinking about his last words. Your life is about to become much more complicated. By 8:30 the next morning, I was standing inside the marketing firm where I had worked for almost 3 years. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. The smell of printer ink filled the air. Everything felt normal, until it did not. My manager appeared beside my desk holding a folder against her chest. Her expression told me everything before she spoke. "Emily, can you come with me?" My stomach sank. 10 minutes later, I sat across from human resources listening to phrases like restructuring, budget reductions, and difficult decisions. Corporate language. The professional cousin of heartbreak. When the meeting ended, I walked out carrying a cardboard box containing my coffee mug, 2 framed photos, and a plant that was probably going to die because I always forgot to water it. 24 hours earlier, I had a boyfriend and a career. Now I had neither. Rain drifted across the city again as I stepped onto the sidewalk. The cold air stung my cheeks. I laughed once. A short, disbelieving sound. Unbelievable. My phone buzzed. A text from my landlord. Rent reminder. Due Friday. Of course it was. I stood beneath the gray sky wondering what exactly I was supposed to do next. That was when another black car pulled to the curb in front of me. Not flashy, not dramatic, just expensive enough to remind me I could never afford it. The rear window lowered. Nathan sat inside. He looked exactly as composed as he had the night before. Dark suit, crisp white shirt, calm eyes. "Get in," he said. I stared at him. "Absolutely not." To my surprise, he nodded. Reasonable answer. The window started rising, then stopped halfway. "You were terminated 23 minutes ago. Your lease renewal is pending. Your former boyfriend has already updated his social media relationship status. Would you like me to continue?" I blinked. "How do you know any of that?" "I pay people to know things." The answer arrived without hesitation. Somehow that made it worse. I crossed my arms. "That is not reassuring." A faint smile appeared. It was not intended to be. The rain intensified. Cars rolled past. People hurried along the sidewalk. Meanwhile, Nathan looked completely unaffected by weather, traffic, or reality in general. Finally, curiosity won. "What do you want?" His expression became serious. 10 minutes. I should have walked away. Every intelligent instinct I possessed suggested walking away. Instead, I opened the door and climbed into the car. The interior smelled faintly of leather and cedar. Warm, quiet, controlled. Nathan handed me a sealed envelope. I looked at it suspiciously. "What is this?" "A proposal." I opened it. My eyes moved across the first page, then stopped, then returned to the top because surely I had misunderstood. I had not. The document clearly stated one unbelievable sentence. Contract marriage agreement. My heart skipped. Slowly I looked up. Nathan met my gaze without flinching. "Marry me for 6 months, Emily." Outside, the rain hammered against the glass. Inside, the world seemed to stop moving altogether. For several seconds I simply stared at the document in my hands. The words did not change no matter how many times I read them. Contract marriage agreement. 6 months. Financial compensation that looked more like a lottery jackpot than a legal arrangement. Confidentiality clauses. Public appearances. Defined responsibilities. My pulse hammered in my ears. "You cannot be serious." Nathan folded his hands calmly. "I am completely serious." I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because sometimes reality becomes so absurd that laughter is the only available response. "You met me less than 24 hours ago." "Correct." "You know almost nothing about me." "Incorrect." That answer immediately annoyed me. That is creepy. That is thorough. I dropped the contract onto my lap. Rain continued sliding across the tinted windows beside us. The city moved outside in a blur of gray and silver while inside the car everything remained still. Controlled. Calculated. Nathan seemed like the kind of man who planned 6 moves ahead before anyone else realized a game had started. "Why me?" I asked. His expression did not change. "Because I need someone intelligent, adaptable, and unknown to my world." "Unknown." "You do not come from a powerful family. You do not have political ambitions. You are not trying to gain access to my company." I blinked. That might be the least romantic explanation for a marriage proposal in human history. To my surprise, amusement flickered briefly in his eyes. "Fortunately, this is not a romantic proposal." The word should not have bothered me. Yet something tightened inside my chest anyway. I looked down at the contract again. "What exactly do you get out of this?" Nathan turned toward the rain-streaked window. For the first time since meeting him, he seemed to consider his answer carefully. "Stability." That sounds vague. It is supposed to. I narrowed my eyes. "So there is a catch." "There is always a catch." At least he was honest. I respected that more than I wanted to admit. Silence settled between us. The driver guided the car through Manhattan traffic while my thoughts raced in every direction. Yesterday I had been planning an anniversary dinner. Today I was unemployed, newly single, and sitting beside one of the most powerful men in America while he offered me a temporary marriage. If I told this story to anyone, they would assume I had suffered a concussion. "No," I said finally. Nathan looked at me. "No. No. Absolutely not." He nodded once. No disappointment. No surprise. Just acceptance. Very well. I frowned. That is it. You expected an argument? Most men do not react that calmly when someone rejects them. Most men are not me. Fair point. The car slowed beside the curb near my apartment building. Nathan reached over, collected the contract, and placed it back inside the envelope. Thank you for listening. I hesitated. Something about his calmness felt dangerous. Not threatening. Certain. Like he already knew something I did not. I opened the door. Cold air rushed inside. One foot touched the sidewalk before Nathan spoke again. Emily. I looked back. His gaze held mine steadily. Before you make your final decision, check your email. My stomach tightened. Why? Nathan's expression remained unreadable. Because your situation is worse than you think. Then the door closed and the car pulled away into the rain, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk with one impossible question echoing through my mind. How could a stranger know more about my future than I did? The elevator doors opened onto the 32nd floor, just as I unlocked my apartment door. Nathan's final words followed me inside like a shadow. Check your email. I tossed my keys onto the kitchen counter and dropped onto the couch. The apartment felt smaller than usual. Quieter. As if it already knew something I did not. My laptop sat on the coffee table. For several minutes I ignored it. Then curiosity defeated pride. I opened the screen and logged in. 37 unread messages appeared. Most were routine notifications. A few rejection emails from jobs I had applied for weeks earlier. Then I saw the one Nathan had warned me about. The sender was my landlord. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. The message was polite, professional, brief. Due to a pending sale of the property, all tenants would be required to vacate within 60 days. I read the email twice, then 3 times. The words refused to change. My lease was ending. My job was gone. My savings account barely contained enough money to survive a few months in New York. I leaned back against the couch cushions and stared at the ceiling. The room suddenly felt colder. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Inside, reality was beginning to close in from every direction. My phone buzzed. A text message appeared from my best friend, Sarah. Are you okay? I almost laughed. No, I was definitely not okay. 20 minutes later, Sarah sat across from me at my tiny kitchen table holding a cup of tea. I told her everything. Ryan, the restaurant, losing my job, Nathan, the contract. By the time I finished, she looked like someone trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Let me make sure I understand this, she said. A billionaire offered to marry you for 6 months. Yes. You said no. Obviously. And now your apartment building is being sold. Correct. Sarah blinked. Emily, this sounds like the beginning of one of those movies you always make fun of. I buried my face in my hands. Thank you. That is extremely helpful. She smiled slightly. Then her expression softened. What are you going to do? That question lingered in the air. I did not have an answer. The next morning arrived too quickly. I spent hours applying for jobs, updating resumes, sending emails. By noon I had received 3 automated rejections and 1 polite notice informing me that hundreds of applicants had already applied for the same position. New York was not a city that waited for people to recover. It kept moving. Either you kept up or you got left behind. Around 2 o'clock another email arrived. This one came from Nathan Whitmore's office. My pulse immediately accelerated. The message contained only a time, an address in Midtown Manhattan, and a single sentence. One conversation. Then decide. I stared at the screen for a long time. Common sense told me to delete it. Curiosity told me to go. Desperation sat quietly between them. At 6 o'clock that evening I found myself standing in front of Whitmore Global Headquarters. The glass tower stretched into the cloudy sky like a monument built for ambition itself. Employees moved through the lobby carrying laptops and coffee cups while security guards watched everything with calm efficiency. I should not have been there. I knew that. Yet my feet carried me toward the entrance anyway. Because sometimes life does not change when you make the right decision. Sometimes it changes when you make the impossible one. The lobby alone probably cost more than every apartment I had ever lived in combined. Polished marble floors reflected the glow of modern chandeliers suspended 3 stories above my head. People moved with purpose around me, dressed in tailored suits and carrying the kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly where they belong. I did not belong here. The thought followed me all the way to the private elevator waiting at the end of the lobby. A receptionist with perfect posture smiled politely. "Mr. Whitmore is expecting you." Of course he was. The elevator climbed silently. 30 floors. 40. 50. My reflection stared back at me from mirrored walls. Nervous. Tired. Completely unprepared for whatever came next. When the doors opened, I stepped into an office larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan. The city stretched for miles beneath a blanket of evening lights. Nathan stood near the glass with one hand in his pocket. He turned when he heard me enter. "You came." I am still not sure why. A faint smile touched his face. "Curiosity." "Desperation," I corrected. "Honesty." "I appreciate that." He motioned toward a seating area near the windows. I sat carefully while an assistant appeared almost instantly with coffee. Nathan thanked her before she disappeared again. The entire place operated like a machine designed around his existence. "Let me guess," I said. "You know exactly how much money is in my checking account." "Within a few dollars." I groaned. That is somehow worse than I imagined. Nathan sat across from me. Calm. Controlled. Impossible to read. "Emily, I am not trying to manipulate you." I nearly choked on my coffee. "You investigated my life, predicted my housing problem, and offered me a contract marriage." "Fair point." That unexpected response almost made me laugh. Almost. He slid a thin folder across the table. "Look." Inside were photographs, newspaper clippings, financial reports, articles about Whitmore Global, corporate acquisitions, public events, interviews. For 10 minutes Nathan explained his world. Investors, board members, business partnerships, expectations, the pressure of maintaining an image that affected billions of dollars. "And somehow this leads to me?" I asked. "My grandfather is retiring from the board this year." Nathan leaned back slightly. "Several investors believe stability matters." Meaning they prefer a family man." I blinked. "You need a wife for public relations?" "That is the simplified version. That is the ridiculous version. Both can be true." I hated how reasonable he sounded. Nathan opened another folder. This one contained the revised contract. You would receive financial security, housing, complete freedom after 6 months. And in exchange, public appearances, family events, professional cooperation. I studied him carefully. No hidden conditions. No emotional expectations. No possibility of this becoming complicated. For the first time since I entered his office, Nathan looked away. Only for a second, but I noticed. "Complications are always possible," he said quietly. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Silence settled between us. Outside the windows, thousands of lights glittered across Manhattan like distant stars. My old life felt very far away from this office. Very far away from this man. Finally I stood. Nathan rose too. "I still have not agreed," I said. "I know. Most people would have given up by now. Most people do not interest me." My heartbeat stumbled unexpectedly. Nathan stepped closer, not enough to invade my space, just enough that I could see the seriousness in his eyes. "Take the contract home," he said. "Read every page. Ask every question. Then make your decision." I reached for the folder. Our hands brushed briefly against the same document. Nothing dramatic. Nothing romantic. Yet somehow the moment felt significant. As if the future had quietly opened a door neither of us fully understood yet. Then Nathan said 6 words that followed me all the way home. "You are stronger than you realize, Emily." For 3 days the contract sat on my kitchen table untouched. Not because I had not read it. I had read it 6 times. Every clause. Every page. Every signature line waiting patiently at the bottom. Yet no matter how often I examined it, The answer remained frustratingly unclear. The practical part of me saw security, stability, a way out of the storm that seemed determined to swallow my life whole. The stubborn part of me saw surrender. One rainy afternoon I was carrying groceries back to my apartment when my phone rang. Ryan. I stopped walking immediately. His name glowed across the screen like a ghost from a version of my life I no longer recognized. After several rings I answered. What do you want? Silence lingered for a moment. Emily, can we talk? The familiar voice felt strange now. Distant. We are talking. He sighed. Not over the phone. I nearly laughed. 3 days ago he had humiliated me in front of an entire restaurant. Now he wanted a private conversation. The irony was almost impressive. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near Bryant Park. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I simply wanted proof that I was finally moving on. The coffee shop smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. Rain tapped softly against the windows while people worked on laptops beneath warm yellow lights. Ryan arrived 10 minutes late. Some habits never changed. He sat across from me and immediately looked uncomfortable. Good. Emily, I made a mistake. There it was. The sentence every romantic comedy teaches people to expect. Unfortunately, real life had already exhausted my patience. Did Vanessa dump you? His expression answered before his words did. That is not the point. It sounds exactly like the point. Ryan rubbed his forehead. Can we just start over? I stared at him. For years I had imagined hearing those words. Back when I still believed love meant waiting for people to become who they promised they would be. Now all I felt was tired. No, the answer came easily. Surprisingly easily. Ryan blinked. No. No, he leaned forward. Emily, we had something real. Before I could respond, a shadow crossed the table. A familiar voice followed. I was hoping I was not interrupting. My head turned. Nathan stood beside us wearing a dark overcoat dampened by the rain outside. Ryan's entire posture changed instantly. I noticed it immediately. The uncertainty. The comparison. Nathan did not seem interested in either. His attention settled on me. I was nearby. A complete lie. We both knew it. Yet somehow I appreciated the effort. Ryan glanced between us. You know each other? Nathan looked at me before answering. We are discussing a future arrangement. The wording was deliberate, careful, mysterious. Ryan's expression tightened. What kind of arrangement? Nathan calmly removed his gloves. The kind that does not concern you. The silence that followed was almost comical. For the first time since meeting Nathan, I saw something beneath the polished confidence and corporate composure. Not possessiveness. Not jealousy. Protection. Simple and unmistakable. He was giving me room to speak while quietly making it clear that I did not have to face uncomfortable situations alone anymore. And for reasons I could not fully explain, that realization affected me far more than the contract waiting on my kitchen table. After Nathan left the coffee shop, I sat there for nearly 20 minutes staring at the reflection of rain sliding down the window. Ryan had eventually given up and walked away, but his departure barely registered. My thoughts were somewhere else entirely. They were following the man who somehow appeared whenever my life seemed ready to collapse. 3 days later I signed the contract. Not because I was swept away by romance. Not because I believed in fairy tales. I signed because reality had cornered me, and Nathan Whitmore had offered a door when every other exit seemed locked. The announcement happened faster than I expected. One photograph. One press release. One carefully worded statement from Whitmore Global. By noon, the internet had discovered my existence. My phone exploded with notifications. Former coworkers. Distant relatives. People I had not spoken to in years. Everyone suddenly wanted to know who Emily Carter was, and how she had become engaged to one of the most powerful CEOs in America. I was still trying to understand it myself. The following Saturday, Nathan invited me to dinner at his penthouse. The elevator opened directly into an apartment larger than some hotels. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Manhattan skyline glowing beneath the evening sky. Everything looked elegant, controlled, perfect. Yet something about the space felt strangely empty. Nathan stood near the kitchen island reviewing documents. He looked up when I entered. You are early. You are disappointed? No, a faint smile touched his face. Surprised. We ate dinner on the terrace overlooking the city. The food was excellent. The conversation was not. Every question I asked about his personal life received a careful answer that revealed almost nothing. You do realize normal people talk about themselves sometimes? I asked. Nathan set down his glass. I am aware. Then why do you avoid it? His gaze drifted toward the city lights. Experience. The answer felt heavier than it sounded. Later that evening, while searching for the guest bathroom, I accidentally opened the wrong door. The room beyond was dark except for a single lamp glowing beside a bookshelf. Framed photographs covered one wall. Most featured Nathan at different ages. Business events, charity functions, award ceremonies. Then I noticed one photograph positioned slightly apart from the others. A woman stood beside a younger Nathan. She was smiling. He was too. It was the first genuine smile I had ever seen on his face. Before I could study the picture further, a voice behind me spoke quietly. You were not supposed to see that. I turned. Nathan stood in the doorway. His expression was calm, but something vulnerable flickered beneath it. Who is she? For a moment I thought he would refuse to answer. Instead he stepped into the room. Someone who taught me that not everything valuable can be protected. The sadness in his voice surprised me. This was not the confident billionaire from magazine covers. This was a man carrying a memory he had never completely escaped. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. The city shimmered outside the windows. Somewhere below, millions of people continued living their lives completely unaware of the silence hanging between us. Then Nathan looked directly at me. Emily, there is something you need to know. My heartbeat quickened. About what? His eyes held mine. Steady. Serious. Unusually unguarded. About the real reason I chose you. The room suddenly felt smaller. Not because of the walls. Because of the weight behind Nathan's words. About the real reason I chose you. I stood beside the bookshelf while the city lights shimmered beyond the windows. Somewhere below us, traffic flowed through Manhattan like rivers of white and red light. Up here everything felt suspended in time. What does that mean? I asked quietly. Nathan looked at the photograph one last time before answering. 3 years ago, Whitmore Global was facing a crisis. His voice remained calm, but I could hear something deeper underneath it. Memory. Most people only saw the headlines. They saw stock prices, business reports. They did not see what was happening behind the scenes. He walked slowly toward the window. One night after a 16-hour day, I stopped at a small coffee shop near Midtown. I frowned slightly, and a faint smile appeared. And there was a woman sitting alone at a corner table. My heartbeat slowed, then quickened again. Me. Nathan nodded. You were helping a stranger. I searched my memory. New York was full of strangers. I do not understand. An elderly man had forgotten his wallet. Everyone around him was irritated, embarrassed for him. You paid for his meal without hesitation. I stared at him. Slowly the memory returned. A rainy evening. Tired old man. A $10 sandwich. That was nothing. Nathan shook his head. To you perhaps. His eyes met mine. At that moment I had spent months surrounded by people who measured every decision in dollars. Every conversation had an agenda. Every relationship had conditions. The room fell silent. Then I saw you. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Nathan continued. You helped someone because it was the right thing to do. No cameras. No audience. No reward. I looked away first. Somehow that felt more personal than any compliment he could have given me. You remembered that for 3 years? I remembered how rare it was. The city lights reflected in the glass behind him. For the first time since I met Nathan Whitmore, I saw the loneliness beneath the success, the exhaustion beneath the control. People saw the billionaire, Theo, the man on magazine covers. Very few seemed to see the human being standing underneath all of it. So you investigated me because of a coffee shop? I asked. Nathan laughed softly. It was the most genuine sound I had ever heard from him. That sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud. Because it is ridiculous. Perhaps. Another silence settled between us. Comfortable this time. Gentle. Then I noticed something. The contract. The arrangement. The carefully negotiated 6 months. None of it explained the way Nathan was looking at me now. Nathan. His expression became serious again. Yes. If this was only business, you would have chosen someone else. The truth hung between us. He could have denied it. He could have redirected the conversation. Instead, he stepped closer. Not much. Just enough. You are right. My pulse stumbled. Then why me? For a long moment he simply looked at me. No boardrooms. No contracts. No investors. Just honesty. Finally he answered. I needed a wife for the company. His voice was low and steady. But I chose you because you were the first woman who made me remember that success means nothing if you forget how to be human. The words settled into my heart before I could stop them. Outside, the city continued moving. Inside, everything changed. And for the first time since the worst week of my life began, I realized that sometimes the end of one story is simply the beginning of a better one.